Hey everybody, how you doing today? I'm freshly shaven, as you can see. That's one of the things, having a beard, right? You're always debating whether or not you should, ooh, look what my hair's doing. Ooh. Windy day today, windy day. So everything's kind of blustery. It's not a very warm day today. Kind of a chilly day. Ooh. You know, the kind of day that wants you to stay inside, bundle up. Getting started pretty late today too. Yeah, but I gotta take my little guy out for a walk. There's a good boy, isn't that right? He's such a good little guy. Yes, he is. My good little man. What's banging around in my head? Watching the COVID-19 news, right? It's something I'm trying really hard to stop getting caught in the news cycle and stop getting caught in the it's like a horror show, right? Like it's like I'm watching this sort of horror unfold. Just last night there was a fellow, he was only in his 40s and he died because of the COVID virus here in Ontario. It's very scary. It's very scary that, you know, we're told that this is an old person's disease, right? It mainly kills old people. Being in your 40s is not old, right? Like I'm almost 40, and so I just feel like there's been so much misinformation about this virus, and there's been so much sort of hand waving, and I think for good reason. Our political class doesn't want to be too specific about how this thing is and how it works and what it does, because I think that the populace is in kind of a state of terror to begin with, and there's no reason to ramp that terror up. The system itself is terrorizing enough. It doesn't need to be multiplied. Again, here in Canada, you're starting to see more and more of the capitalist death cult start to assert itself, right? There was this initial appearance that our political class was going to do the right thing, pass the basic income, all of this stuff. But as we move more along, it becomes more obvious that the capitalist death cult is not going to tolerate systems that save the populace from it, that it requires sacrifice of blood and time. And when Justin Trudeau stands up and says he's going to bail out small businesses, when he says he's going to bail out businesses, that's sacrifice to the capitalist death cult. Individuals need bailing out. People need bailing out. Businesses can fold. And really, if you were giving bailouts to individuals, well, then those businesses, which are extension of individuals, businesses are just a tool, right? They're just an object. They're not anything. They're this sort of illusionary, imagined kind of structure that exists in our society. And bailing out a business is it's a sacrifice, is what it is. It's a sacrifice to the capitalist death cult in favor pouring money into that instead of saying to the individuals of your society, the people, the citizens of your society, we're going to take care of you first. We're going to put the emphasis on you, and these businesses, which are just sort of an artifice in the first place, they need to kind of go away, or they need to be put on hold at the very least. It's been very entertaining watching Doug Ford, who is a capitalist through and through, take multiple measures against capitalism. He seems personally affronted by the concept of price gouging. Price gouging being a completely normal thing in capitalism. It is how capitalism functions. It's called supply and demand. It's baked right into the ideology of the death cult, that if people require a specific item or a specific commodity, You just jack the price because their desperation is your profit, right? That's capitalism at its core. The suffering of other people is not relevant to the conversation. I mean, it is relevant to the conversation as it's becoming more and more apparent that capitalism is a death cult. I just find myself repeating that over and over again. And I worry that it's going to become tiresome to listeners and tiresome to people when I write about it. But I just don't think it matters. I think it needs to become a common parlance. The word capitalism should only be followed by, like, we shouldn't say capitalist, right? We shouldn't just say capitalism. It really should be capitalist death cult. Like, that's the full phrase from this day forward. And I don't see any reason to refer to it in any other way, as it's revealed itself completely now. You have more and more people even after this sort of first wave of people standing up and saying we should sacrifice people to the COVID virus, we should just let the virus have its say and just sacrifice people to it. There's even more people coming out now. Conversely, you have even more people standing up and calling for a general strike. That's been fascinating to see. Unexpected people like Britney Spears, Fran Drescher, standing up and saying we should have a general strike. And more in the United States, because of the abject theft that's happened in the States now. This round of bailouts that has occurred down in the States. Like here in Canada, we're influenced by the death cult. I do think that we are more empathetic, where we still have a party that is slavishly dedicated to the death cult, and it's becoming more apparent that that's the case. But in the States, I mean, their entire system, the Democrats and the Republicans, are both just slaves to this capitalist death cult that is overwhelming their system. The passage of this most recent stimulus package or bailout bill or whatever you want to call it, like, people had to fight to get even the most rudimentary help for workers and for the poor, right? Meanwhile, billions upon billions of dollars are going to go to massive corporations, and that money is going to be used. I mean, the lie has become so obvious now. It's like, oh, we need that money so we can, or else we'll have to lay off workers, right? And it's like, you're going to lay those workers off. We know it. You're going to use that money to buy back your stocks, right? As your system of the capitalist death cult collapses back into a feudal system, right? As we enter kind of a neo-feudal age, with corporations essentially being little kingdoms, right? You're going to use that money to buy back your own stocks. You're going to use that money to give yourself and your CEOs bonuses. And you're going to use that money to buy up cheap assets as the assets collapse in price, right? As small businesses and all of this have to fold. That's how the system is structured. That's the design of the system. That's how it works. And so there's this real sense of desperation that's happening in the United States. The epicenter of the coronavirus, but also the epicenter of the capitalist death cult, right? And here in Canada, it looks like there was, kind of at least a brief, momentary realization among the highest level of our officials that, like, okay, like, we can't sacrifice everything to this capitalist system. Like, it's this death cult is obviously not the way to go. It's obviously something we need to work against. And I feel like the proof in that is that the Liberals had systems in place ready to go, right? Like, they really were ready for some kind of situation had legislation, they had ideas, they had things that were like right on the tip. There wasn't any general confusion among the liberals. They really came out strong. They really came out with a straight back, and they just said straight, we're not going to abandon people. We're going to pass a basic income. And it's only as things kind of move forward that cracks are showing in that kind of first strong force. And they're starting to kind of whinge a little and start to bend to the capitalist death cult. In the States, it's full-on sacrifice mode, right? Like, it's full-on. Like, they're gonna throw, what, $1,200? Like, the math on this is really obvious, right? So they take 10,000 from every citizen. I think the number is about 10,000. They return 12,000 or 1,200, 1,200 back to the citizens that they just took 10,000 from, and then they steal the rest, right? The 88,000, or the 8,800 rather, that they took from the citizenry, from each citizen, they just steal it. They just take it and they give it to the corporations that are just going to do exactly what we know they're going to do. They don't care about the workers. They don't care. They've stated their willingness to sacrifice the lives of the workers, right? And I'm happy to see that there is going to be some kind of general strike movement down in the United States. I hope something similar starts to happen here in Canada, because the way that the capitalist death cult has operated is rapacious. It's objectively evil. And I just think more and more people are starting to wake up to the fact that this has always been the case. The capitalist death cult has always been this way from its inception, from day one. When capitalism shows up, it shows up by doing an objectively evil act, by forcing people off of the land of their ancestry into factories to make widgets. And to steal their productivity for themselves. That's essentially the first act of the capitalist system, is to take people who have been living on land, right? This is exactly what happened in Britain. The capitalist class was able to get power and land from the sort of failing monarchical system that had been weakened. The merchants were able to gain more power and started to buy up. They started to buy property from the monarch class, because the monarchs don't care about, they care about the peasantry exactly as much as the merchants do, which is not at all, right? They care about their productivity exclusively. And if they die, that's fine. And I mean, you can read about all this, just read William Blake. William Blake was very, he spoke about this very openly. You can read Charles Dickens, right? Charles Dickens writes about this pretty extensively, right? You just send children into factories, this sort of thing. That's what capitalism does, because capitalism is a death cult. It doesn't care. And that's how it begins. And then from there, it just starts picking people up. The slavery, like black slavery, like that's an extension of capitalism. Capitalism commodifies people. And on it goes. My big concern is that people are going to try to pretend as though this is a unique Trump phenomenon, that Donald Trump and this very small group of Republicans are the problem. When the real problem is capitalism itself, that capitalism as a system is a death cult. It's designed that way. because it starts by saying, well, we'll extract wealth from the populace by enslaving the populace. And so we'll extract wealth that way. Of course, you've got to give the workers survival wages, and some of the workers you can give slightly more than survival wages, but only so that they can pretend like they're better than the people working for survival wages, right? That's your doctor, lawyer, engineer right there, right? Like, doctor, lawyer, engineer, they can pretend like they're better than everybody else. They went through more education. We made them take more student debt. We made them take more education so that they could do this work on our behalf. And sure, we'll let them have enough so they can have a bigger house. And sure, we'll let them have enough so they can have a car, you know, and a nicer car, right? Oh, that's fine. We don't care. As long as they keep working for us and we can keep exploiting their labor for ourselves, that's what we care about. And the extraction process, right? The wealth extraction, and then the piling the money into a giant black hole, that's phase one, right? Phase one is extracting the wealth and piling it into a corner somewhere, right? Or buying up other assets, things like this, as it goes. Now, phase two, because this extraction process itself exhausts and collapses the society by design. That's the design of the system. That's how it works. And sort of the layman, or a person who doesn't actually understand what's going on around them, will be like, well, why would a capitalist want to collapse a system that is giving them profits? Come, there's a good boy. Sit. There's a good boy. Little car coming here. Oh, let's take a little Milo break. Hey, Milo. He's my good boy, Milo. He's a good boy. What a good boy. He's such a good dog. That's a little Milo break for you. Come, good boy, buddy. Good boy. So phase one of the capitalist death cult is to enslave the populace and extract as much wealth as they possibly can for them. This started with black slavery and then moved into wage slavery. And now most people operate in kind of a wage slave system, right? They're paid wages to do a job. Those wages, of course, are a pittance compared to the productivity they're actually creating. The rest of the productivity is stolen from them and jammed into little black holes. And so the question comes up, why would a capitalist want this system to collapse, right? The capitalist is the person they're relying on this system of extraction for their own personal profit. Why would they want that? Well, once you're a billionaire, right, the collapse of that system is actually a feature, not a bug. You don't care about the misery it's causing. You don't care about that. And in fact, if you're like a rapacious sociopathic death cultist, the way that these people are, that too is a feature. Spreading misery is a feature. You want people to live in misery. That gives you joy, right? If you're a sociopath or a psychopath, right? Hurting other people is good. And so the fact that there's kind of widespread misery and widespread fear is good. You want that. So that's feature number one. But feature number two is that, the system collapsed. That means that this avenue is no longer profitable, right? So I can just abandon all those people, spreading one, misery, which is good. Two, it means that I can just leave, right? I'm a billionaire, I don't care, right? I can't make money there, I move on. And then three, the third feature of this is that as that system collapses, right, you now have the opportunity, because you have $1 billion or $100 billion. You've got you've got the kind of money that Michael Bloomberg has. He can just run a presidential campaign, throw $500 million away, just gone into the wind, and walk away and be like, oh, well, I tried, that was fun. So feature three is that you can use that money to buy assets that are now dirt cheap, right? And this is all before the kind of stimulus package comes around, right? You have that money. You can just buy cheap assets. And so you buy up cheap assets, right? Who cares if it raises the price of your housing? Who cares if it makes it more difficult to open a business? Who cares? Billionaires don't care about you. Like, they only care about you insofar as they can exploit and cause you harm. That's what they want, right? They take pleasure and joy from that. So the collapse of the system is a feature of the capitalist system if you're a billionaire. That's phase 2, right? Phase 2 of the capitalist kind of collapse of the capitalist system. Phase 1, erect systems that exploit, denigrate, and cause harm to the workers for your monetary benefit, right? Collect as much money as you can. Phase 2, when that system collapses, as it's designed to collapse, buy up as much property as you possibly can, right? And then you go back to phase 1, which is just exploit more. Nothing I'm saying here is controversial. This is to play one game of Monopoly, right? Play one game of Monopoly, you'll see it in action. The whole system is designed for a series of collapses, all of it kind of collapsing until only one capitalist remains, until the high priest of the death cult of capitalism is revealed and owns everything. That's how the system is designed to function. And so I'm glad to see that there are more and more people beginning to wake up. I hope that people get away from this narrative that it's Donald Trump's death cult and begin to recognize and realize that capitalism as a system is a death cult. It's designed that way. It's supposed to collapse. You're supposed to be abandoned. You're supposed to be exploited. You're supposed to be exhausted. That's the purpose of the system. And more and more, I do feel like people are starting to realize that their leadership is sort of sociopathic and incompetent and part of a death cult. But I'm concerned that they're not extending that into the fact, and it's a fact, that their system is designed to be a death cult. That the exploitive nature of capitalism is by design. It's systemic. And if we don't actually address that system, and if we don't actually dismantle that system through a basic income, incidentally, then we're not going to address the rot that the capitalist death cult has given us. Okay, I'm out of time on this video, so I think in the next video I'm going to talk about the difficulty people will have with a collapsing capitalist death cult and a transition into a more socialist society. I just feel like people have this real difficulty believing, because of the kind of collective failure of our imagination, people have a lot of difficulty believing that there can even be a system that doesn't rely on the total exploitation of the people who are in it. Anyway, I'm going to talk about that next time. I think I'll think on that. I hope you guys are all having fun out there. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having fun with the people who are around you. I hope you're isolating well. I hope you're loving each other. God, do I ever hope you're loving each other. All right. Have fun out there, guys. I love you all. If you made it here, please like and subscribe. It actually helps with my mental health. Just seeing a little ding, seeing somebody comment, seeing a little subscription really makes me feel like I'm not talking into a vacuum. Okay, guys, have fun.